Hey friends, welcome back to Grand Adventure. I'm your host, Mark Guido, and it's been over 2 years since we first introduced you to Visible, our inexpensive solution for getting unlimited internet data on the road as we travel. Our Grand Adventurers know that we rely on reliable internet to be able to work from the road as we travel around the country. And Visible remains today one of our key ingredients in a larger recipe that we use for reliable internet service. We're going to update you tonight on everything that's changed since we first introduced you to Visible, and also the other providers that we use for redundant reliability. And a lot of what we're going to show you tonight focuses on a very important piece of hardware that I'm going to show you right now over here hiding behind our television set, and that is this little guy right here. So stay tuned for more. Now, before we get any further into the other details that we're going to share with you in this episode, let's first dive into what's changed about Visible since we first published that video about Visible's internet service and phone service back in October of 2019. Yeah, so that's over 2 years ago. And as you might expect, a lot has changed. Now, Visible is a wholly owned subsidiary of Verizon. It operates on Verizon's 4G network. They offer unlimited talk, text, and data for $40 per month. Now, you may say, well, I already have an unlimited plan on Verizon or what have you. What you need to understand is that you have a cap on your hotspot data, no matter what unlimited plan that you're on. Therefore, you do not have unlimited data to anything other than the phone. Also, some of those plans have a soft cap of around 21 gigabytes of data that even on your phone, it's going to deprioritize you if in fact you go over that limit, even on your phone. But still, most of those plans come with approximately 15 gigabytes of hotspot data. And if you use that to, say, for example, stream video, you're going to go through that 15 gigabytes possibly in one night. So that's really not a viable alternative. Visible, on the other hand, offers unlimited, truly unlimited hotspot. Now, a couple of things. One, they do have on hotspot a 5 megabit per second cap, speed cap. Not a data cap, but a speed cap, such that if you are hotspotting, you're supposed to be limited to 5 megabits per second. Now, a couple of points on that. First of all, that is sufficient to stream HD video. I'll tell you that right now. Or make Zoom calls, or for us to work in general on a VPN while we're on the road. So really, that speed cap doesn't affect us very much. But understand, in all full disclosure, it's there. Now, there are ways to get around that. You can change the outbound TTL on your router if you do have the ability to do that, such that the tower thinks it's your phone and not hotspot that's consuming that data. Now, I'm not going to comment on whether that's a violation of their terms of service, and I'm not encouraging you to do that, but I'm explaining that that is one way to get around that speed cap if in fact you have the need to do so. Another thing to understand is that on most devices, there is a limit of one device connected to hotspot at a time. There's a way to get around that too, and that is you connect a router to the hotspot and then you connect all your other devices to that router. You are only connecting one device to hotspot at a time, and that is your router. However, all the devices connected to the router have the same internet service because you're using a router to channel that communication between the phone providing the data and your devices. So those are two things to understand. One thing that has changed about Visible Internet since we did that video is they now have a program called Party Pay. And what you do is you get others on the same party with you. Now, that's not to say that you share a bill or even you really don't even have to know who the other people are in your party. You just have to be connected in Visible system. For each person that you add to your party, it drops another $5 off your bill per month until you get down to $25. So for us, for example, we're in a full party, and that gives us the ability to get unlimited data via Visible for $25 per month. That's a bargain in anybody's books. Now, we always used a dedicated phone for that purpose in our RV, and I'll link right here to that video from a couple of years ago that you can go back and check that out, because that explains Visible service in far more detail. But understand that what I just explained to you in this episode are the things that have changed since that video was first published. Now, also down below in the video description, I'll put a link to Visible that'll get you a discount on your first month's service. Also give us a discount on our subsequent months of service, and we'll also provide a link to our party in case you wanted to join ours and drop the amount of your bill down to $25 per month as well. So that's an update on what we have to talk about with Visible. Now, in the intervening years, we've needed to add redundancy and duplication to ensure that we have service just about anywhere that we want to camp. For one thing, we added a grandfathered unlimited AT&T SIM card. Now, AT&T no longer offers plans with unlimited hotspot. However, at one time they did. And we pay a pretty penny to lease one of those grandfathered lines on a SIM card that we can actually put right in our LTE router to also have service on AT&T. That way, if Verizon is not strong in one area but AT&T is, we turn to AT&T. If service is not strong and reliable on AT&T in a certain area, but Verizon is, we rely upon Visible. There are times, of course, where if we're in a congested area, say an urban area, Visible does get deprioritized at the tower level over native Verizon customers. So I might have much better speed on Verizon than I do on Visible in a very limited number of circumstances. For that reason, we also have a SIM card with 150 gigs of data, a limited amount, on Verizon that we can turn to in those very rare instances that we need to do so. Also, we have coming Starlink, and I am very excited about that. Our order just processed this morning, and coming up later this winter, we're going to have satellite internet through Starlink. Once we get a chance to put that through its paces and get used to using it, we're going to do another episode coming up this winter about our experience with Starlink. But the thing is, now we've talked about Visible, AT&T, Verizon, and coming up Starlink. Add to that also campground Wi-Fi and other sources, and we have a whole bunch of stuff to work out and figure out how to manage together. And that's where that piece of equipment I showed you in the beginning comes in. So with all those different services that we're using, we actually needed a way to be able to manage them all together. And that's where this Pepwave MAX Transit Duo comes in. Now, before I explain to you what this is, let me tell you right up front, we have no business relationship with Pepwave whatsoever. We have not contacted them. They have not contacted us. We are not being sponsored for this video. We went out and bought this router just like every other consumer does. This actually is best explained in the context of internet service in your house. If you have a sticks and bricks home and you get the internet via either the cable company or from the phone company via DSL, you have two devices that work in concert with one another to provide that internet service. One is a modem and one is a router. The modem is what communicates with the phone company or the cable company to bring the internet into your home. And then that is passed on to the router to distribute to all the devices that are connected to the internet throughout your home. Sometimes those two products are combined in one box. And if that's the case, it's called a gateway or a residential gateway. But a gateway is just a modem and a router in one box. This also is kind of like a gateway. It's a modem and a router in one box. Except this modem, instead of communicating with the cable company or with the phone company via DSL, communicates with cellular carriers via the LTE network. It can also bring in other internet sources, such as campground Wi-Fi, or in our case, our upcoming Starlink connection that we're so excited about. This will manage all those. On top of that, it will provide failover protection so that if one internet source goes down, it'll automatically go to a different one without even skipping a beat. And you can prioritize your internet sources the way that you want to. So now let me explain some of the features of this wonderful little marvel. Back here, behind this dust cover, we actually have 4 SIM card slots in 2 banks. Bank A contains 2 SIM card slots, and Bank B contains 2 SIM card slots. In Bank A, I have my visible SIM card and my Verizon SIM card. In Bank B, I have my AT&T SIM card, and I'm going to explain to you in just a few minutes how we manage all this. But before we go do that, let me turn this around and show you a few things on the front side. Now, you can power this any number of different ways. You can hardwire directly to your 12-volt system in your RV using this green plug right here. Or over here, you can use the AC power adapter to plug into 110 AC household current, or you can use a cigarette plug lighter adapter for your car or motorhome or what have you to be able to power it that way. What we choose instead to do is we run off our 12-volt system for boondocking, but we do so via these 2 micro USB ports down here. We just plug those into USB ports that we have available in the RV, and that provides us with 12-volt power for this router. There are also, there's a gigabit LAN port and a WAN port. Let me explain to you what these do for a moment. The gigabit LAN port will allow you to connect to the internet via cable, so that way you can hardwire a device for greater speed and reliability. We actually do that with our television in the unit. The WAN port can also be, with software, used as a second LAN port. However, if you leave it as a WAN port, this allows you to connect another internet source via Ethernet cable. For example, our forthcoming Starlink setup will be able to just cable right here in the WAN and make it available as another internet source to be able to complement the LTE internet that we're getting via the SIM cards that we have in these slots back here. Now that I've shown you what this is, let's go and show you how the configuration works to provide for automatic failover. In case something goes wrong, it'll automatically pick up from your second choice internet. So let's go back and check that out. So here we are on the dashboard for the Pepwave MAX Transit Duo's configuration, and this is where a lot of the meat happens after you've already configured the router to your liking. Now you can see up here we have priority 1. Right now I don't have anything in there. We have priority 2, priority 3, priority 4. This is where you are able to select your various internet sources and prioritize them into what you want the router to turn to first. Right now in priority 2, we have our visible SIM card. We've made that the highest priority. Wi-Fi WAN on 5 gigahertz down here in priority 3. That is our campground Wi-Fi source. And right now in our lowest priority, priority 4, we have our AT&T SIM card. Disabled right now, we have another Wi-Fi over WAN if we wanted to configure 2 different campground Wi-Fi sources. This is Internet over WAN just above it. That is where we will be plugging in our Starlink router to the Pepwave, and that way we can include Starlink in this mix once we have it. Now this router does accept OpenVPN configurations, and that's what we have down here. So, but right now, these are the 3 being used. And you might say to yourself, well, what happened to that Verizon SIM card you talked about, Mark? Well, we'll get to that in just a moment. But let's say, for example, we wanted to switch over to campground Wi-Fi as our first priority. All I need to do is drag this up and stick it in the highest priority slot. Now, while it's connecting, it'll still remain connected to Visible. That way it won't even drop a single packet before it switches over like that to our campground Wi-Fi. Now we're on campground Wi-Fi. Right here is where you configure the various wireless networks that are available that it can see. In this case, we're connected to our campground's Wi-Fi. And Visible has gone into standby mode. Now, while we're in standby mode, let's click on details on our Visible SIM card, and you'll see my SIM card A is my Visible SIM card. SIM card B is my Verizon SIM card, which it is not presently using, because down here, I have told it I want you to only look at SIM card A. SIM card B only is also an option, or it can look at both SIMs, in which case both would be connected concurrently. Right now, we are connected primarily on LTE band 4 and secondarily on LTE band 5. That is a great feature of this router, because down here, you can see I have deselected band 2 and band 66. And the reason I've done that is the service has historically been absolutely horrible on those two bands in this location on the south end of the Salt Lake Valley. So I have disabled it. So I've told Visible, don't even look on band 2, don't even look on band 66, find me some other bands, which it has done by going to bands 4 and 5. That way I know I get the fastest connection that I can possibly get on Visible. You can configure DNS servers. I found that sometimes Visible's DNS servers are unreliable, so I switched them to Google's. SIM card B, like I said, is my Verizon card, and that is not unlimited. So down here, I've told it I get recycled on the 5th of every month. I have a 150 gigabyte limit, and please email me when I hit 75% and again when I hit 95% of that 150 gigabyte limit. Disconnect completely once I hit 100, because that's going to be absolutely useless. Whereas over here on Visible, I have no limits. So I've just left all that blank. Now I've told the Pepwave router, only connect to any of these sources if I have 1 bar or greater signal. If I want 3 bars or more, I just drag that slider over. There's some other configurable settings down here. Probably not worth getting into you for the purposes of this video. So I'm just going to X out of that. And this will show you, this is the CPU load. Whenever I make changes, that'll spike up until it completes the changes. Then it'll trigger back down. And you can see my throughput rates here. I'm getting 10.46. Well, now it just dropped to 6 megabits per second up. Download is pretty lousy on campground Wi-Fi right now. So we're going to switch it back to Visible, and then we're going to be much better off. Now, once that finishes changing over, I'm going to walk you through. There we go. We're already back on Visible. I'm going to go through these other options, these other tabs here, and just briefly explain some of the features. Now, again, some of these features are way more technical than this video is intended to address, so I'm not going to get into that with you. Speed Fusion is what Pepwave calls their bonding, their provider bonding feature. And what that will do, this is really kind of cool. Let's say, for example, we're in an area where none of the services are really that speedy, but some of them might actually not be too bad. So what this will do is this will send some packets out on Visible, some packets out on campground Wi-Fi, some packets out on AT&T, and it will combine them all at a server at Pepwave and then send them out into the internet combined. So that's using all your internet sources at one time. That may actually give you a better speed. This also, Speed Fusion Cloud is also a way by which you can remotely administer your router. Let's switch over here to the network tab, and you can see my network settings. You can configure any number of LANs. I've never hit the limit. We're only using 1. I don't have any reason to have more than 1 LAN. Over here on port settings, this is where you can change that secondary Ethernet port to either a WAN port or a LAN interface. That's where that's done there. Captive portal, that's, when you get a splash screen when someone connects to the network. We're not Starbucks. Don't really feel the need to do that. Switching over to advanced, Here's that PEP VPN with Speed Fusion, the technology, the bonding technology that I just talked about. And again, most of these things I'm not going to get into with you now, but know that you can do port forwarding. You can do quality of service where you can prioritize certain applications or certain types of files. You do have full firewall configuration and routing protocols. And I can let you just take a quick peek down here at other things in the sidebar, but they're well beyond the scope of this video. If I go over here to my access point tab, this is where I have my SSID configured. You can configure, like I said, multiple SSIDs. You can also configure this for a mesh type system. These are your access point, your SSID, your wireless client settings where you can reserve IP addresses for specific clients. If I go over here to the System tab, again, not going to go into too much detail here, but this is where you can upgrade the firmware. This is when you can schedule internet services. This is where you configure remote access. You can add on features. For example, the OpenVPN capability is an add-on feature. We paid an extra $20 to add that on. We can remotely reboot the router, ping and trace route utilities. If I switch finally over here to the status tab, this is where you have a list of active sessions, a list of clients on your network. This is where Speed Fusion is configured, UPnP for adding devices to your network. We make ample use of these usage reports. Let me show you one way we do this. I'm going to take the daily usage report, which by default configures to all WAN sources, but I'm going to go just to the Verizon card. That's the one you remember has the 150 gig limit. And I can see here how well I'm doing as the month goes on. This month I've only used 0.16 gigabytes of transfer on a 150 gigabyte card. But if I've been using the Verizon card heavily for work, I can come in here and try to pace myself and make sure that I'm not going to go over before the end of the month. But you can look at this stuff on an hourly basis. You can look at this stuff on a real-time basis. There are all kinds of ways that you can keep track of what's going on with the internet data traveling through your Pepwave MAX Transit Duo router. Now, I'll be the first person to admit this kind of hardware does not come cheaply. The Pepwave MAX Transit Duo router goes for around $1,000, and that may at first seem like an awful lot of money. But let's think about this for a second. Even if you only have two MiFi hotspot devices on two different cell phone carriers, that alone is going to cost you more than $1,000. And you don't have the redundancy, you don't have the automatic failover, you don't have the ability to select and drag and drop and prioritize your internet sources to automatically switch from one to the other. You don't have the ability to bring campground Wi-Fi into the mix. You don't have the ability to bring Wi-Fi or internet over WAN into the mix like Starlink. You get all that in one box for $1,000. And if you're working on the road and you depend on that kind of internet reliability for working on the road, this kind of dependability just cannot be beat in the market right now. We hope that this episode has provided information that's useful to you. If you like this episode, please be sure to give us a big thumbs up down below. And while you're down below, that's where you'll find the comment section. And we love to hear from you after each episode of Grand Adventure. Now, we air new episodes every Wednesday evening. And coming up later this winter, we will be covering our experiences with Starlink. So if you're not yet a Grand Adventurer, I can't think of a better time. Now, go smash that little red subscribe button right down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And ring that notification bell to be sure that you come along on each and every Grand Adventure. Finally, we'd be honored if you shared the channel with your friends, family, and on social media. So until next week, please remember, life is nothing but a grand adventure. We'll see you then.